Man, get up here in the Zoloft to get your head right.
What's up, sinners? Welcome to the Zoloft. Let's dig into the mystery of who Cain was afraid of in Genesis 4:14. Cain murders his brother Abel and then has the audacity to be afraid of somebody killing him. Ain't that some mess? I mean, don't get me wrong, murderers don't want to be killed either. But it's like Cain didn't even express any remorse for murdering his brother. No, instead of expressing anything that shows that he kind of felt bad, he instead implicates God as being unjust. He's like, look here, God, I need a lighter sentence for murdering my brother, man. He's like a person being convicted of murder wanting to be removed from population because he's afraid of the other inmates. But who are these other inmates that Cain is afraid of? Cain was the firstborn of Adam and Eve, and then came Abel. There couldn't have been anyone else out there for Cain to be afraid of. Adam and Eve did eventually have other children. Cain took his sister for a wife, and when God banished Cain, she went with him. This does not mean that God condones incest. Quite the contrary. This is actually one of the reasons why God told Adam and Eve not to eat from the tree of knowledge of good and evil. The world wasn't supposed to be populated in the manner that they had to resort to. Sin entered into the world, and an expression of sin would be incest. Upon eating from the tree of knowledge of good and evil, Adam and Eve unlocked things in the world that weren't supposed to be here, like murder, which Cain committed, and incest. So for those who believe that incest was too despicable of an act for Cain to commit, I'll remind you that murder is pretty despicable too. Now one would say, what choice did they have? Exactly my point. This was a conundrum they were never supposed to face. But they ignored God and let the devil influence them, and now we live in a world where people murder and do shame with their relatives. Now, to who Cain was afraid of who would kill him, when supposedly there was no one else out there. Before Adam and Eve were created, the angel we've come to describe as Lucifer tried to get mighty with the Almighty with a third of the angels, and they got served and thrown to the earth. And on a side note, they were thrown to an earth that was already here before the 6-day account. We'll talk more about that in another episode. This chief angel, now known as Satan, and his angels were body slammed to the earth. Satan hates God. His angels hate God. And if they hate God, then they hate what is created in his image. Cain knew who was out there. He knew they weren't other humans. He knew that fallen angels were thrown to the earth and they hated humans and would kill him on sight. Now in God's mercy, to put even the murderous mind of Cain at ease, God told Cain he would place a mark on him to protect him from being murdered. These fallen angels will not murder Cain because of this mark. Quick side note, I offer that these fallen angels are not the sons of God, B'nai Elohim. Please see my video on knowing the Nephilim. But how do I speculate that they're fallen angels? Like I said, they were thrown to the earth with Satan. We're told that Satan got booted out of heaven in Isaiah and Ezekiel. But dig Revelation. Y'all, Revelation isn't just a book that reveals to you what's gonna happen. It's a book that reveals to you what has also already happened and uses what has already happened to indicate to us what will happen. Revelation reveals understanding on things that may have caused you to scratch your head a bit while reading the Old Testament. One of those little details is revealing who Cain was afraid of. Now I offer that Cain was marked by God to protect him from fallen angels. Or at least whatever it was he was afraid of wasn't human. But let's see what Revelation reveals to us about who Cain was afraid of in Genesis. God will also mark who will be here during the trumpet judgments to protect them from demons. Revelation 9:1 through 11. That being the 144,000 from the 12 tribes of Israel. These Israelites are redeemed from the Jews who not only rejected the Messiah and had him who did no wrong killed, like how Cain killed his brother who did no wrong. The Israelites killed their prophets before Jesus began the ministry they would have him killed over because they wanted the favor of God without following the law of God. Or they followed the law according to their understanding, not according to his counsel, or they were just dismissive of God altogether. Cain thought he could acknowledge God any old way he wanted to also. And that's what a lot of people do to this very day. While y'all say that the Bible is outdated and irrelevant, people still doing the same thing today they were doing back then. Telling God how they're going to acknowledge him, if they acknowledge him at all. Now, because Cain didn't acknowledge God according to God's statutes, Cain became twisted and felt justified in murdering his brother. Lots of people believe in God, but don't want to abide by his rule. Demons believe in God. They just don't accept his rule and thrive on death. People tend to be the same. If you are of the mindset that you are spiritual, but you're going to be dismissive of the King of Kings and Lord of spirits himself, then misery, oppression, and murder follows. We end up doing that to ourselves when we take our eyes off of God. Loving God isn't God being an egomaniac. Loving God is how we know how to love each other. Because even love, according to our own ideals, ultimately is toxic. Because people will even oppress and murder, thinking it's out of love. That's why God says love him first, so that you will know how to love. This isn't some self-serving satisfaction of God. It's for us. His delight in us loving him results in us loving each other right. And to this very day, you got people murdering and oppressing in the name of gods they don't even know, that they can't even know. God, however, says, don't take my name in vain. Don't do wicked things and saying you're doing it in my name. I never told you to do that. But Cain wasn't on board. Also, Cain would not forgive. That's why God is so big on forgiveness. When people can't forgive, oppression and murder follows. Cain wouldn't forgive God for his favor of Abel, and wouldn't forgive Abel for excelling with offerings that pleased God over his. Cain could have brought some proper offerings, but his attitude was like, God, you'll take whatever offering I give you and like it. Side note, this is why it kind of bugs me when people assume that they are spiritual. Oh, I'm not Christian, but I am spiritual. Or my God accepts me and only my God or goddess can judge me. A God that you can shape and fit into your worldview ain't a God. What kind of God allows you to shape and bend it to whatever will you want it to? That's a sucky God. And a God that you can know on your own terms is not a God. And assuming that you can acknowledge Almighty God according to your own ideals like Cain did is not a good idea. Anyway, God puts a high premium on forgiveness because of what not forgiving does. It makes people stupid with hate, and senseless violence, oppression, and murder follows. Oh, I see you have on the wrong color. That's unforgivable. I'm gonna have to kill you. Oh, I see that you are the wrong color. That's unforgivable. I'm gonna have to kill you. Oh, you don't worship my God? That's unforgivable. I'm gonna have to kill you. Oh, you have money and I don't. That's unforgivable. I'm gonna have to kill you. Oh, you're an unplanned preborn baby. That's unforgivable. I'm gonna have to kill you. See, Cain puts up a picture of why forgiveness is so important because it can cause people to be stupid with hate and murder people over something that didn't even have to be an issue. It happens all the freaking time. It's been happening since the days of that irrelevant, archaic, outdated Bible to today. And Cain was afraid of the demons who would not forgive God and who hated man who was created in God's image. And out of that unforgiveness, the demons would have murdered Cain. So there you go, y'all. Don't hold on to hate. Unforgiveness is a killer. And when you're in a state of unforgiveness and hate, you can find yourself in the wilderness like Cain at the mercy of demons who can tear your life apart. And you're gonna need Christ to keep them from succeeding. Hope this observation of who was spooking Cain resonated with you, and thank you so much for coming to get your refill from the Zoloft. If you want to support, I hope you'll visit my website, alfonsorachel.com, so I can keep the supply coming. He's like, look here, God, I need a lighter sentence for murdering my brother, man.